Good morning on this Sunday, July 20th. State lawmakers brace for the possible impact of funding cuts in President Trump's big, beautiful bill. President Trump orders the release of testimony from the Epstein files amid mounting backlash. And Georgia elections take center stage under the Gold Dome ahead of the 2026 midterms. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Brian are in. The debate and discussion start right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Welcome to the Georgia Gang. I'm Deidre Dukes in for Lori Geary. President Trump has ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi to seek the release of grand jury materials tied to Jeffrey Epstein, escalating a political firestorm that has reignited conspiracy theories and angered part of the president's base. Now, in a post Thursday night on Truth Social, President Trump wrote that he had directed Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony, subject to court approval, calling the controversy a scam perpetuated by the Democrats. Bondi echoed the announcement moments later on X, saying, "We are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts." President Trump's announcement comes days after the Justice Department released a memo asserting that Epstein had no blackmail client list, did not extort anyone, and died by suicide. Now, the memo, meant to end speculation, only added fuel to the fire. Well, Phil, President Trump pointing the finger at Democrats, but several Republicans, including Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, calling for transparency in this issue.
Well, that's right. And just for some context here, I think the whole Epstein issue, and I think it's pretty much agreed that this was a blackmail operation. And this involved intelligence that was very sensitive, whether it's with the CIA or a rogue CIA element or the Mossad. I'm speculating here, but I think it's proper speculation. But I think there should be transparency. Most of us always argue for that on the panel anyway when it comes to policy issues, but there are exceptions. So I think the president has pivoted, properly so. I think there is bipartisan concern over what's really going on, and I think if there are documents that are credible that are going to be released by Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, release them. And I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, and Melita, this is one of those rare occasions, you could say, where it seems like Democrats and Republicans are on the same page and calling for seeing more of the Epstein files.
Well, and that part is true, but I think many Republicans are also in deny and deflect mode, trying to deny that any documents which might be produced would be or could be legitimate, and deflecting attention from the Epstein case to other matters. So it will be interesting to see when and if the documents are produced, and whether those documents offer a complete picture of the crimes which sent both Maxwell, and Epstein to prison.
You know, a lot of people eager to get a look at those files. President Trump's big, beautiful bill making headlines here at home as Georgia lawmakers prepare for the possible impact on state funding. Now, some rural hospitals could be hit hard by the funding cuts and may even be forced to close their doors. There's also concern that thousands of Georgians could lose health care due to cuts to Medicaid. And earlier this month, Governor Kemp directed state agencies to freeze funding at current levels through fiscal year 2027 to create contingency plans for potential funding shortfalls. And Theron, state Democratic lawmakers are calling for a special session to address the possible impact of the federal funding cuts.
Well, Deidre, shortly after the bill passed, I call it the bad, bizarre bill, and B. Riley, I'm going to get that T-shirt made. I'm going to get you and Phil one if y'all want to wear it.
I'm an extra large.
Okay, God, no problem. Phil, I think, Phil, you work out. You probably But immediately after the bill was passed, you saw Speaker John Burns come out and do a interview and say, hey, look, we as state lawmakers are going to have to deal with this, right? It is going to be a burden on us. He didn't specify what the burden would be. He didn't specify what the cuts. And then you see the governor come out and demand that all state agencies freeze spending. Now, this is some spending that has been congressional dollars, federal dollars that's been mandated to the state that's going to do some good for the state. And so I think what the people, the public needs to know is that bills have consequences, and this bill is going to have a tremendous negative consequence, Deidre, to Georgia. And I'm hearing right now from several hospitals in the Atlanta area, and I won't say their names, but these are prominent hospitals that are already offering incentive packages to people to say, hey, look, let us buy you out. Can you take an early requirement? They're already cutting their staff and they're cutting resources. This is happening right now in response to this bill. So think about where we're going to be a year from now, where you don't have that money that was allocated, I think $540 million that was going to go to rural and urban hospitals. So these hospitals are going to fill it. Emergency rooms are going to get longer waits, and more importantly, not going to have enough doctors because the hospitals are not going to be able to have the funding to pay them.
But still, Brian, our state lawmakers, GOP lawmakers, are saying that they are in full support of the bill that was passed.
Well, we're going to have a reckoning coming when it comes to spending in this country, as I've discussed here many times. We've got a $37 trillion debt. Hey, there's going to be some tough decisions moving forward. I think what Governor Kemp here has done is just simply prepare for a wait-and-see attitude. One thing we're hearing from state leaders isn't that this is a catastrophic situation, is that we don't really know just yet how this is going to play out. There's still a lot to be determined. Darren and I last week went and spoke to a bunch of hospitals at their conference, and so I went and talked to the policy folks, and they were like, this isn't going to impact Georgia the way that it is states that have expanded Medicaid, or the states that have much more juicy Medicaid benefit packages than we do. We've got a pretty skinny Medicaid benefit package here, and that's going to play to our benefit as we seek ways to perhaps backfill this money if in fact there are cuts coming to the state. No one wants to see rural hospitals closed. I think you're going to see leadership from Republicans in the General Assembly and Governor Kemp should we get to a place where those healthcare resources are put in danger, because there are vast parts of the state where you can't get critical care already. So maintaining what we have is going to be very important, and we're not going to let that go away. We have $16 billion in our reserves.
Lena?
Well, there are 93,000 Georgians who might be kicked off of Medicaid, and you've got 1.2 million Georgians who will see their health care costs increase, and you've got 16 cash-strapped rural hospitals who might close as a result of this bill. So those are some pretty dire consequences, particularly in rural Georgia. And then the same kinds of impacts are happening for education and after-school programs and many other federally funded benefits that many of the state's citizens now enjoy.
Now, of course, there are also some concerns over federal funding when it comes to education. With school set to start next month, more than 20 states have sued President Trump's administration over billions of dollars in frozen education funding. Some of the money withheld are funding after school and summer programming for over 1 million children and teens nationwide. Now, the lawsuit alleges withholding the money violates the Constitution and several federal laws, and Phil, $200 million of that money that's being frozen at this point, it should go to here to Georgia students.
Let's clarify the word frozen. It's actually a temporary review. So, and that's just responsible.
But it's money that has already been included.
It's money that's been included.
It's
and this is my second point. If you want to debate this,
I'm not debating it, but I'm just making it clear that it is money that was already allocated. We just want to be fair.
And it's under review, which still could be released. The problem we have is a huge problem, and it goes back to the Biden administration. Although there has been bipartisan spending, as Brian points out, with the debt. You have to. And let's take one quick example. A lot of these cuts are because of so many non-English speakers in our schools. We've just been swamped over the last 4 years thanks to the crazy open borders policy. We've got to review where does this money go for English speakers? We have to review how much is going to be done for teachers outside of the classroom. Some of that can be cut. So it's under review. I think the media and the Democrats especially are getting hysterical. We're going to get this straightened out. Obviously, Republicans are for quality education.
And yet it's also money, and Melita, I'll let you talk, that Congress and Trump already signed off on.
Yes. And 10 of the 100 most affected school districts in the nation are in Georgia. And Attorney General Chris Carr, fearing Trump's wrath, did not join the other attorney generals in filing that lawsuit. But to have 10 of the top 100 districts most affected in Georgia is a significant impact.
It's under review.
Real quick, $6.8 billion, and I think the appropriate term, Phil, will be it was congressionally appropriated. All right, you know the Constitution better than anybody on this panel. When you have a congressional appropriated funds that go to states, if you hold it up, that's called a freeze. But I want to just compliment State Senator Rashawn Kemp, who went to a press conference this week and spoke up and asked the president, congressional, but also Governor Kemp, to release this money to make sure that we support K through 12 education and make sure that these public schools, who are getting ready to open, by the way, and to Melita's point, we're being affected. We need that money now. It can be done. everyone doesn't have to just stop and evaluate everything just because Trump wants to look at something. If it's congressionally appropriated, if it's here in the state, let's spend it on our children and let's support these teachers.
And we'll leave it there. Coming up, more fallout from the first Liberty Ponzi scandal and Georgia elections, the focus of a special House committee. We discuss when we return.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has returned thousands of dollars in campaign funds he received from a local lending firm charged in a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme. He is urging others to do the same. Now, the SEC charged First Liberty Building and Loan and its founder with running a $140 million Ponzi scheme, misleading investors with promises of high returns on promissory notes and loan participation agreements. Now, the company allegedly used new investor funds to pay earlier investors, while Frost misappropriated millions for personal expenses, including luxury items and vacations. Secretary Raffensperger has joined Democratic lawmakers in urging all elected officials, political candidates, and political action committees to return any campaign contributions they received from the owners or the company itself.
I work every day for hardworking Georgians. I know what they're going through. Many of them gave so much away, almost all of their life savings to this, and they're totally financially devastated. So this is how we can make sure that we can get that money back. The money I received was going back to 2018, but at the end of the day, we want to get their money back and see if we can get them whole.
Investigators say the family used investor funds to make more than $570,000 in political contributions, all of which went to Republican candidates and committees. And they do have family ties to Georgia political parties. It runs deep. So could this really be a major issue on the campaign trail, Brian, for Republicans?
No, but I do agree with the Secretary that Republican candidates who receive that money should return it. It's a show of good faith. This is obviously dirty money at this juncture, and it's good politics for them. And I see it, as much as anything, as an opportunity for Republicans to be seen doing the right thing, trying to make these investors whole. I will say that if you are investing in a company where the slogan is, "We give loans when the banks won't," that should be a red flag for you as an investor. And also, if you are getting returns every month that don't seem in any way connected to the market, that's a second red flag. So I do think that we all, and look, I'm not smart enough to miss a Ponzi scheme either, but perhaps we need some Ponzi scheme education when it comes to what are the warning signs that you're being duped. This is a tragic, tragic situation. And one thing I want to point out is that one of the family members who was part of this has now opened up a new business, has filed for a state license to operate a similar type business. I think that's a little too early, buddy.
And Phil, what are you hearing in Republican circles?
Well, obviously, it's a really tragic thing to see people's savings destroyed. And so I think it's a civil case now that's going on against the Frost family. That's interesting to me. And I think you'll be seeing some criminal charges. And I think fraud, obviously, is a 10-year prison term. So I think you're going to see that unfolding.
Real quick, if I can jump in, these were if you look at the people who were defrauded and basically led to believe that their money, many of whom actually are conservatives, people who are a part of the evangelical base of the Republican Party, which is a base of people who the Republicans depend on to vote for them in Georgia. They gave this money under the pretense that this was going to go to Republican candidates like Brad Raffensperger and others to help them get elected. And so these are seniors. Many of them have exhausted their 401ks, their retirements to give this. And so, yeah, I commend the Secretary of State for giving the money back. But where are all the other Republicans? Because one of the things that Republicans like to talk about, Deidre, and Melita knows this, is that corruption. Like all this corruption in the Democratic Party. To me, you want to look at what's something that every single Republican needs to give money back is to not only give the money back to these hard-working people who were basically misled, but this is an organization that was helping get Republicans elected throughout the state. And I think that for them to just say, okay, well, it's tragic and it shouldn't have happened and I don't know Ponzi schemes. No, if this was on the other foot and this was Democrats, they would be demanding people to be resigned. They'd be trying to lock people up.
I think Republicans are saying it's terrible and we're against corruption.
Should be locked up.
Yeah.
Should be locked up.
Yeah.
And look, this was not a political scheme. This was an investment Ponzi scheme. The
to help Republicans get elected.
No.
They give money to Republican candidates.
It's less than $600,000 out of $140 million. That is not a political scheme. That is a family giving money to political candidates. candidates who did not know that these were ill-gotten gains. So there's a big gap between 140 million and 600,000.
But Brian, you have said previously, and I don't want to misquote you, that this was a group that was encouraging Republicans to vote on certain things, encouraging their membership to support Republicans on certain issues, right? That's called advocacy. And if you're raising money to potentially push a party to try to disconnect and try to say, hey, it's only $600,000 out of 1.4, is a part of your Republican structure. I mean, where's
I'm
the line?
glad you're worried about corruption after the
I've
last
always been
4
worried.
years. After the
I've
last
always been
4
worried
years,
about
you
it.
weren't worried about
And we're
Biden
going to leave
corruption.
that there. We're going to leave that there.
Investors weren't giving to give to politics. They were giving to get money back.
And we'll expect that you said you don't think it'll be up for debate, but it sounds like this may be an issue that's up for debate when our candidates hit the campaign trail. Now, with Georgia's midterms on the horizon, a special House committee met at the state capitol on Tuesday. The panel tasked with evaluating Georgia's election policies and will make recommendations for new election laws ahead of the 2026 legislative session. Now, Melita, important work under the Gold Dome going on there.
It is important work, but it's interesting to note that the resolution which established this committee said that the chair of the Governmental Operations Committee would chair that committee, but instead Speaker Burns appointed Representative Tim Fleming of Covington to chair this Blue Ribbon Commission, which flew in the face of the resolution which established it. Fleming is an announced candidate for Secretary of State. They're planning statewide hearings. So this, in essence, becomes a taxpayer-paid statewide tour for an announced Republican candidate to promote himself for office supervising elections in the future. So it's almost smelly to do that.
Phil, you raised several questions in a recent op-ed piece.
That's right, and I'm going to expand on your point. I think that yes, Tim Fleming is a candidate for Secretary of State, and I think it should have been somebody else that's over this hearing. In fact, it's no secret that Kelvin King, who's the husband of our former Georgia Gang panelist Janelle King, is also going to be announcing soon for Secretary of State. So is this a one-up to your opinion? And of course, I think maybe the Democrat Sarah Draper, my Democrat colleagues may know more than I do, may want to run for Secretary of State. But to focus more on what's going on with this blue-collar committee, I think it's a dog and pony show. It was all how great Georgia is. Now, yes, the Republican legislature did do a lot of reforms since 2021, needed reforms, but I think this is just a duplication of what the State Elections Board should be doing. Now, the State Supreme Court has said the State Elections Board can't do some of this rulemaking. We've debated this on the gang, and I think the legislature, I'll be critical, they didn't fix this in the last session. I think quickly in January, they need to clarify what the State Election Board can do and cannot do. And I think that's fine. This committee is holding a dog and pony show, but I think that's going to be the reality of what's going to happen in January.
And that has to be the last word. We've got to end it there. Coming up, MARTA announces a change in leadership and why some politicians say Georgia hit a home run with the MLB All-Stars. That's next.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Thousands of baseball fans converged on Truist Park for the 2025 All-Star Game last week. The two-day event was expected to generate around $50 million in revenue for the metro area. Now, Atlanta has waited for another chance to host the game. 4 years ago, the MLB pulled the All-Star Game out of Atlanta, citing opposition to Georgia's new voting law. At the time, league officials said the move was about upholding values of fair access to voting. The game was relocated to Denver, sparking outrage from Georgia Republicans and mixed reactions from business owners who lost out on millions in revenue. So, Brian, Republican lawmakers considering the All-Star Game's return to Georgia serve a political home run this year.
Well, we've certainly seen a lot of Republicans take the opportunity to speak out this week about MLB's major strikeout a couple of years ago. What a PR disaster that was for them. I spoke to a Sports Illustrated reporter this week who was doing a follow-up on this controversy. Theron spoke to her as well. And one thing of note is that she called all of these people who were making the big stink a few years ago, the people saying Jim Crow 2.0, the people encouraging MLB to pull this economic development event out of our city that hurts small businesses, many minority-owned small businesses at that. And none of those people would call her back. Now, is it because any facts changed? No. What happened is that The public figured out the ruse. They figured out that they had been lied to by these people. We've had an increase in turnout in this state. Let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate civic voter participation in a system that voters believe in. We saw last year that 90% of Georgia voters said they trusted the outcomes of our elections in 2024. That is fantastic. And thank you, MLB, for acknowledging it.
So at the end of the day, the Major League Baseball is a business, Deidre, and I think that they made a business decision. What Brian wants you to believe is that it was the Democrats' fault why this Senate bill was introduced. It was not. It was because the Democrats that year, many of our viewers remember in 2020, we beat the Republicans at their own game. These were the rules that they put in place. These are the advanced voting sites, early voting. I even heard this most recent election, right, in Fulton County. If you want early voting, this PSC runoff, I know we're going to talk about it today, there were only places like north of like the city of Atlanta you can vote. A lot of people on the south side didn't have early voting. All the absentee ballots. So when we won and beat them at their own game, they came back to the legislature that year and said, you know what, we're going to change these rules and we're going to introduce Senate Bill 202. That is what sparked the controversy. I don't believe it was Jim Crow 2.0, but I do believe that it made it harder for people to vote. It was unnecessary voter restrictions. And the climate at that time was one that was very toxic. And so MLB said, you know what, we're not going to go into a state where we want everyone to be getting along, everyone to actually working together. And particularly the business community at that time was sort of, you know, kind of on the side of like, all right, let's make sure we really look at this. And if there's fraud, let's put it out. But if not, you know, let's not go with it. So it's not the Democrats that forced the argument. It was a Republican voting on a bill that led to a response. But I will say this as a Democrat. I am happy that the MLB game came. I took my son to the home run derby. He had a great time. I still won't let him do the tomahawk chop because I believe that it is racist. But I saw those business owners, Deidre, many of whom, not all black, white, Hispanic, Asian. I saw the people coming together. It was a good day for our economy, but we cannot act like that, one, it was the Democrats' fault why the MLB pulled out. It was the Republicans' fault because they introduced the bill and passed it. And then two, we still believe that there are some of these issues we're fighting for against then, and we're still fighting against them today as well.
Well, let me get in one quick word. I think the baseball commissioner, Rob Manfred, is a spineless weasel. He is a lawyer. He couldn't read the statute back in 2021. Now he says, oh, it's okay now. The same statute was, of course, in place. And, of course, it was Stacey Abrams, as we all know, and a lot of the Democrats. That's why they didn't want to respond this past week, Brian. They were ashamed, I think, of what they did back then. And it hurt us. It hurt so many people economically in Cobb County. But it was a wonderful week. I agree with you. It was great for the kids especially. And I say keep on chopping.
And real quick, a big change at the top for MARTA, with Atlanta set to host several major events in coming months. MARTA's general manager and CEO has stepped down, signing on immigration and personal matters. Now, the transit agency's board of directors announcing that during Thursday's board meeting. And there, this announcement caught many people off guard.
Yeah, full disclosure, I do work with MARTA. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Collie Greenwood, for stepping in to be MARTA GM at a time where we had a very tragic, unfortunate, didn't know it was coming, suicide by Jeff Parker. Say what you want to say about the guy. He led with compassion. Ridership is up. They just got notification last year that they were the #1 transit authority in the country. You look AAA bond rate. I can make a good case why he was there. However, Deidre, it is this. The man is going through what I think many people are going through right now. That is the immigration system that is broken. He's here. He's a Canadian. A lot of folks didn't even know he was a Canadian living in Georgia legally, him and his wife working. And so when you can't work because the immigration system has said you can't, he immediately came and said, hey, let's bring somebody to fill in. And Rhonda Allen is going to be great. She's going to be acting. And I think the board made the right decision. The comments were, I think, supportive of him. But ultimately, look, he made a decision that he was going to do what's best for him and his family. They're going to have a committee that's going to look at an interim in place. And ultimately, I think MARTA will get strong from this and recover and continue to work in a multi-jurisdictional way to try to make sure that transit, which they play a key part of, continues to expand in this region.
His work visa ran out. That's what happened.
And we're going to have to wrap it up right there. My producers are in my ear. Winners and losers coming up next.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, this week's winners and losers. We're going to start with you, Melita.
Thank you. I'd like to offer condolences to the family and friends and legal colleagues of internationally respected trademark attorney and leader for justice Miles Alexander, whose service was on Monday. And then my personal loser of the week is CBS for canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, we got that news. Quite a surprise to many. Yeah. Phil?
Well, I've got a winner. It's Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. He just named a state Senate committee to eliminate the state income tax. That's been one of my crusades over the years, and a lot of people's crusades. And I hope we can get that done over the last couple of years. And also, Ben Land, prominent jurist on the Court of Appeals, Governor Kemp named him to the state Supreme Court. Interestingly, Governor Kemp now has named a majority of the state Supreme Court justices.
Interesting fact there.
I want to wish a happy birthday to my boys, Tyson and Tatum. Also want to think that Jeter, it's been 5 years since Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis passed away. So thank you to all the people who went to the streets across the world in a peaceful way to uphold their legacy. And also my loser, I haven't done a loser in a long time, but it's the Cobb County School Board who made the decision this week to stop broadcasting public comments during their meetings. We got to give people an opportunity to express their First Amendment rights.
Brian?
My winner in this attention economy that we have is Hank Johnson for breaking through on the Jeffrey Epstein case with his song. Likewise, my loser is Hank Johnson because the song just simply wasn't that good.
Oh, don't do Hank like that. Hank,
it wasn't that good.
Keep playing your guitar. I love it.
It was not a catchy tune.
Humor
I wasn't singing it in the bathroom.
The only black man that can't do music.
Have a good week.
He's got a day job.